Hey guys, Polygood here, and welcome to this new video that will hopefully teach you everything you need to know about snapping. In Blender, we're gonna see every option in object mode and edit mode, like a snap basis, snap target, and all those extra options you see down here. So let's no more waste any time. Let's get started. So whenever you open first Blender, so you have this snapping option over here that you can activate by pressing Shift Tab or just clicking in here. Or you can just, when you select an object and you say, for example, move, use move, press J to move. You can hold Control and it will start snapping. So for the first option, we have what is called increment snapping, as I just displayed right here. It's gonna move by increments. So let's enable it with Shift Tab, and you can see that it moves by increments on the top left of the screen by 1 meters. You can find different metrics that you're using in the scene tab. So you can see we have imperial units, we've got known, so it's going to be abstract, and here we're using meters. We can work with centimeters, etc. This unit scale, you need to keep it at 1 because otherwise it's going to screw up with your blend file. But if, let's say, you want to make increments instead of 1 meters, you want to make increments of half a meter, you need to go to this overlay tab, and for the scale of the 3D grid, you want to set it to 0.5. So this is going to be like half a meter. And you can see we now on the top left that we're moving by increments of 0.5 meters. Okay, so let's move it back to 1 and explore the different options. So here we have absolute increment snap. So the difference between the classic snap is that, for example, let's turn off snapping with Shift Tab temporarily. Let's say right now it's, as you can see, at 0, 0, and 1 meters distance. You can see here, if I decide to enable snapping by holding Control, with absolute snapping, it's gonna snap it back to the grid. However, if it's being turned off, you can see that it keeps our previous position. Okay, so that's for incremental snapping. Here we have different affectation that can happen from the increments. So we have move, rotate, and scale. So we can choose to enable or disable them. So if I press, let's say, R, and wait, let me just enable with Shift Tab. If I press R, you can see it's gonna rotate by increments of 5. And if I scale, it's also gonna scale by increments. So this is what these settings do. Here we have the rotation increment, so you can see set to 5. If I set it, for example, to something like 15 degrees and press R, you can see on the top left that it's moving by only 15 increments of 15 degrees. I can also hold Shift, and it's gonna move by increments of, it's gonna increase by sub increments of only 1 degree, which you can see in here, and you can modify it here as well. It's called precision increments. Okay. Next, we have the grid snap, very similar to the increment snapping, except it will only snap to the surface grid. As you can see, no matter how much I move it, it will always be on a flat plane. Same thing if you move it like to orthographic view, it will always just move, you can see, by those specific amount of squares. Vertex snapping, as the name suggests, will snap to the nearest vertex it can find on any object. Snap base is a setting that will tell Blender which part of a mesh do we actually want to use as a snapping center point. So for active, it's gonna be the active object pivot. For median, it's gonna be the sum of all the objects you have selected. So as you can see in here, it's in the middle. For center, it looks very similar to median, but it's actually not using for reference the objects you selected. But this point, for example, if we set it to 3D cursor, you can see the pivot is in here. And if we move our meshes, you can see it gives an offset relative to the 3D cursor. And for closest, it actually completely ignores topology. It actually ignores the meshes. It's going to use topology instead to dictate where the snapping point is gonna be. So as you can see in here, it's using the top right corner of this plane. And if we select both, it's just using the cube because it's much more closer than the plane actually is to those vertices. Edge snapping is very similar to vertex snap, except it snaps on the surface of edges. We have another option which is called Edge Center, and by the way, you can also press shift click to select both options at the same time in case you want to work with multiple snapping techniques. So Edge Center will snap to the center of edges of every face, as you can see right here. And we also have a last one which is called Edge Perpendicular. So this one is a bit weird the way it works, but in that case it can be useful. If you go, for example, to this front view, you can see this cube is purposely set a little bit lower than this one. And if I just choose to like move it, you can see we have like the white spot happening in here, and it will pretty much snap to edges surface that are directly perpendicular to the one it is actually. So personally, I never use it, but just so you know, it does exist. All right, so to finish the basics, now we have face snap. That is something you're gonna use a lot during in your production pipeline, especially when doing retopology. It pretty much snaps to any surfaces you're gonna be putting these on. So as you can see, I have face snap enabled, and it just it just snaps to the faces directly instead of vertices of or edges. Now we have an extra option that is very useful if you want to place something, let's say for example an extra item on a different object. We have align rotation to target, and you can see that now my cube is following the normal orientation of the surfaces being placed on. So this is very, very handy. And we have another extra option which is called backface calling, which is, in case it is enabled, it will prevent the object to snapping on inverted normals. So as you know, normals have a front side and back side, and you can see here it's being inverted. It's shown in red, but in here you can see it's still snapped. So if you have like a hollow mesh and you don't want any snapping to happen on a hollow surface, you can turn this on. So that's pretty much it for face snap. Volume snapping will try to find the middle point of any object you're trying to snap it to. In our case, it's very useful for rigging. As you can see, I have a slightly displaced arm. And what I can do is just go to edit mode. You can see we have volume enabled, and just move it in here. And you can see it automatically puts it inside of the arm, just at the hand joint. Having the snap peel option enabled can be useful for certain types of objects. For example, in our case, a character comprised of separate objects. You can see if I have it disabled for now, when I try to move this bone, it's actually gonna struggle to find, it's gonna snap to different parts of the volume center. However, if I keep snap peel enabled, this would treat all those separate meshes as one single object, and you can see it doesn't wiggles anymore. It considered this mesh as a whole. So face project and face nearest only work properly in edit mode, but you're gonna see that they are very, very useful snapping features. As you can see, I've got this little character in here, and I want to start making retopology for the arm. So I just have a slightly lined up cylinder, and instead of trying to wrap it around using some sort of shrink wrapping, what we can directly do is enable face project, or in this case face nearest. Go to edit mode, press G to turn it on, and you can see we directly have our arm completely wrapped up, and we can just do this, press G again, and you can see perfect perfect topology just around the arm. And the key differences between this one, face nearest and face project, is that face project will project it from the camera view angle. So you can see if I do this, you can see it behaves just like that. It's not the expected behavior because it doesn't try to push around the surface. It just tries to snap to your direction. As you can see, let's say I want, for example, to project this little disk on this sphere. We're gonna use face project because you can see face project gives us, not exactly from that angle, but if we line it up properly, you can see it lines just as we expected, right? However, if I was to use face nearest for this situation, so as you can see, we can also increase the precision, even though I don't think it does much. But you can see we have very awkward result. Like it doesn't really behave as expected. So two different snapping settings for different use cases, but very useful when you know how to use both. Alright, so last but not least, we're going to see as the final chapter the inclusion and exclusion of snapping objects. So when we're in object mode, we have the ability to exclude non-selectable. This will mean that if we go to the outliner right here down to the little hopper and get into the selectable, if we set, for example, this object as unselectable by clicking this, we will not be able to snap on this item, on this object anymore. However, you can see that this one, because it's still written as selectable, we can snap just as we want. And to get all the details, we're just going to switch to edit mode. And now we have a couple more options. You can see I have everything selected. So include active if we turn this off. So now we're in vertex select mode. If we turn this off, you can see that we can no longer snap to our own mesh vertices, but we can snap to any other object verts. If we go to, let's say, let's turn all of this off, we say include edited. So this means that if we have another object selected, you can see this one is active, we can snap to this item, but you can see that we cannot snap to this other non-selected object that is not in edit mode. So that way you can sort of save computation time by only selecting two items. And if you have a very large scene, it's going to ignore all the surrounding objects. Next we have include non-edited. So you can see it does what it says. This object is not, this cube is not selected right here, but it actually snaps to it. And then we have the same option, exclude non-selectable. So if we turn this object, make this object as unselectable, and we move it here, yeah, sorry, exclude non-selectable, you can see it's not going to snap. So this is pretty much it for everything you need to know about all the snapping features in Blender. All the thing I showed in object mode pretty much works for edit mode as well, and those two special cases like for face project and face nearest has also been shown. So yeah, that's the end of this tutorial, guys. If you liked it, please hit like and subscribe. That's gonna help me a ton. And if you want to see more, feel free to recommend me in the comment uh, other subjects you would like me to talk about, and I do my best to explain to you. So see you, bye.